The silverware trembled in my hand as my sister's words cut through the Christmas dinner conversation. "It's just so sad that some people never reach their potential," Olivia said, her eyes sliding toward me with practiced pity. "Catherine, maybe you should ask Mr. Townsend about openings in the mailroom. At least it's a real company." Mr. Townsend, Olivia's boss and dinner guest, chuckled on cue, wine sloshing in his crystal glass. The sound of their shared laughter seemed to amplify as the blood rushed to my ears. I felt my chest constrict as I watched my parents exchange that look, the one that carried 17 years of disappointment since I'd abandoned the family plan. My phone vibrated silently in my pocket, the fourth urgent message from the board about tomorrow's acquisition, the one that would make or break Townsend's career, the one that only required my signature. "My name is Catherine, I'm 32, and this is the story of how I stopped hiding my success from the family that defined me by my failures." I hadn't planned to reveal anything tonight. For 5 years, I'd maintained the careful illusion of mediocrity, the modest teaching job, the struggling apartment, the second-hand Honda, all while building Summit Enterprises into a global powerhouse that had quietly acquired Townsend's company through a subsidiary last quarter, finalizing the full merger just over a year ago. "The garage is all ready for you, Kathy," my mother announced, breaking into my thoughts. "We put a space heater out there since Amanda needs the guest room. She's pregnant, you know." As if pregnancy ranked higher than basic hospitality. The table fell silent, relatives pretending not to listen while catching every word. This was their annual entertainment, watching Catherine get put in her place. "The garage?" I kept my voice neutral, despite the December chill already seeping through the windows. "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, passing the cranberry sauce without looking at me. "There's a heater, and it's not like you're not used to modest accommodations." I thought about my penthouse overlooking Central Park, the vacation home in Maui, the private island I'd purchased last summer, all carefully hidden under layers of shell companies and discrete ownership structures. "The garage is fine," I said, slicing my turkey into precise pieces. "I'm sure it's better than what most of my community college students have." Olivia's smile widened. She loved it when I mentioned my teaching job, more proof in her mind of my failure to launch. "That's the spirit," she said, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she reached for her wine. "At least you know your place." After dinner, Olivia led me to the garage, a cold concrete space despite the small heater, humming ineffectively in the corner. They'd set up an old military cot between Dad's golf clubs and boxes of Christmas decorations. A thin blanket lay folded at one end, probably pulled from the back of some closet. "Dinner tomorrow is at 7 p.m., Olivia said, her voice echoing in the bare space. "Try not to track any dirt into the house when you come in." As the door closed behind her, I pulled out my phone. 3 urgent emails from the board needed attention before tomorrow's meeting. The same meeting where Olivia's boss would be presenting his quarterly reports, unaware that his year-end bonus depended entirely on my approval. I smiled slightly as I typed out my responses. Olivia had no idea that her perfect boss, Mr. Townsend, had spent the last month desperately trying to arrange a meeting with the elusive CEO of Summit Enterprises, the parent company that had quietly acquired their firm last year. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant. "Mr. Townsend asked again about meeting you before tomorrow's board meeting. Should I tell him you're unavailable?" "No," I typed back. "Let him think I'm still in London. It'll make dinner more interesting." I changed into fresh clothes, carefully hiding my designer blouse under a plain sweater. The garage was freezing, but I'd endured worse in my early days of building my empire. While Olivia had been climbing the corporate ladder, bragging about each small promotion, I'd been quietly acquiring companies, restructuring industries, and building something far bigger than anyone in my family could imagine. At precisely 7 p.m. the next evening, I walked into the dining room, taking my assigned seat at the far end of the table, as far from the important guests as possible. Olivia sat near the head next to Mr. Townsend and his wife, laughing at something he'd said. "Catherine," Dad called out. "Olivia was just telling us about her latest promotion, Junior Vice President of Operations. Isn't that wonderful?" I nodded, accepting the plate of turkey being passed my way. Congratulations, Liv. Summit Enterprises must be impressed with your work. Mr. Townsend smiled broadly. She's one of our rising stars. The merger with Summit last year has opened up so many opportunities for talented people like Olivia. The merger, Mom sighed happily. We were so worried when we heard Summit had bought the company, but it's turned out wonderfully, though no one seems to know much about Summit's CEO. Very mysterious, isn't it? Olivia leaned forward, eager to share her insider knowledge. Apparently, she's this reclusive billionaire who never appears in public. Some say she lives in London, others think she's in Tokyo. No one at our level has ever met her. I took a sip of wine to hide my smile. If they only knew that the mysterious CEO they were gossiping about was sitting at the end of their table, banished to sleep in their garage. I heard she's brilliant, Mr. Townsend offered. Transformed at least 12 major companies in the last 5 years. Built Summit from nothing. Well, Olivia said dismissively, she can't be that brilliant if she's hiding from everyone. Probably some trust fund baby who got lucky. Just then, Mr. Townsend's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face turning slightly pale. Excuse me, I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway, but his voice carried clearly into the dining room. Yes, I have those reports ready for tomorrow's board meeting. No, I haven't been able to reach Mrs. CEO yet. Yes, I understand how important. She's still in London? Mr. Townsend returned to the table looking flustered. His earlier confidence diminished. Olivia, ever eager to impress, immediately launched into another story about her recent achievements. I just restructured our entire operations department, she boasted, cutting her turkey into precise pieces. Saved the company millions. I checked my phone under the table, pulling up the actual report from that project. Olivia had indeed made changes that had cost the company nearly $3 million in inefficiencies. I'd been watching the numbers tank for weeks, waiting for the right moment to address it. As CEO, I received daily updates on all major departmental changes, especially those led by executives like my sister. More wine, Catherine? Mom offered, probably hoping to keep me quiet during Olivia's moment of glory. Though maybe you should stick to water, given your financial situation. Olivia snickered. Yes, community college teachers should really watch their spending. Mr. Townsend's phone buzzed again. This time when he checked it, his face went completely white. I need to make another call. Urgent business. As he hurried from the room, I could hear him practically begging into his phone. Please, just 5 minutes with Mrs. CEO, the board meeting tomorrow. I'd instructed my assistant to start sending him a series of increasingly urgent messages about tomorrow's meeting. A little cruel, perhaps, but after years of watching Olivia lord her position over me, I felt entitled to some theatrical justice. Speaking of business, Uncle James chimed in, did you all hear about Summit's latest acquisition? They just bought out Richardson Global for $12 billion. Olivia sat up straighter. Really? That's one of our biggest competitors? A hostile takeover, Aunt Margaret added. Richardson never saw it coming. This mysterious CEO. She's absolutely ruthless. I thought about the Richardson deal, remembering the late nights spent strategizing, the careful maneuvering of assets. Ruthless wasn't the word I'd use. Strategic, perhaps. Determined, definitely. Mr. Townsend returned again, looking like he might faint. Mrs. CEO is calling an emergency pre-board meeting tomorrow at 7 a.m. All department heads must attend. Olivia's fork clattered against her plate. What? But tomorrow's Christmas. She doesn't care, Mr. Townsend replied weakly. She's reviewing all recent operational changes. Olivia, bring your restructuring reports. Now seemed like the perfect moment. I cleared my throat softly. Mr. Townsend? He looked up, seemingly surprised to hear my voice from the far end of the table. Yes? The meeting's actually at 8 a.m., not 7, and Olivia won't need her reports. I've already reviewed them. The room went silent. Olivia let out a nervous laugh. What are you talking about? You don't even work for Summit. I stood up slowly, smoothing my simple sweater. Actually, I do. In fact, I am Summit. I turned to Mr. Townsend. Those reports you've been trying to get to me, I received them last week. We should discuss the Q4 projections. They're off by about 30 million. Mr. Townsend's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You're Catherine Wilson, CEO of Summit Enterprises? Yes, I smiled, enjoying the way Olivia's face had drained of all color, though most people just call me Mrs. CEO. Mom's wine glass slipped from her fingers, spilling red across the white tablecloth. No one moved to clean it up. This is a joke, Olivia whispered. It has to be. I pulled out my phone, projecting my company ID onto the dining room wall. There it was in high definition. My photo, my title, my company. No joke, Liv. While you were climbing the corporate ladder, I built the building. But you're a teacher, Mom stammered. I teach one class per semester at the community college, I corrected her, because I believe in education and giving back. The rest of my time is spent running one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Olivia pushed back from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't be. You live in a tiny apartment. You drive a Honda. I own the building where my tiny apartment is located. As for the Honda, I shrugged, it's good for the environment. Unlike your Mercedes, which, by the way, you probably shouldn't have charged to the company account. Mr. Townsend had sunk into his chair, no doubt remembering every condescending comment he'd made in meetings about the mysterious CEO. The garage, he muttered. We made you sleep in the garage. Yes, I said quietly. You did. All of you were so busy judging me by appearances that you never bothered to look deeper. I turned to Olivia. Remember last month when you denied Sarah in accounting time off for her son's surgery? Olivia nodded mutely. I approved her medical leave personally and arranged for the best specialist in the country, because that's what real leaders do. They take care of their people. Dad finally found his voice. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have mattered? I asked, meeting his eyes. Would you have treated me any differently if I hadn't been successful on your terms? This family measures worth by brand names and bank accounts. I wanted to build something meaningful. I turned to Mr. Townsend. The board meeting tomorrow will proceed as scheduled. We'll be discussing the operational restructuring that cost us $3 million, among other things. My eyes shifted to Olivia. I suggest everyone comes prepared. You're going to fire me, Olivia whispered. No, I replied, gathering my belongings. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago, hold you accountable. Success isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about integrity, innovation, and actual results. I headed toward the garage to collect my bag. Behind me, I could hear the chaos erupting. Mom's protests, Olivia's denials, Mr. Townsend's frantic phone calls. One more thing, I said, pausing at the door. I won't be sleeping in the garage tonight. I have a suite at the Four Seasons, which I own, by the way. Merry Christmas. As I drove away in my environmentally friendly Honda, my phone buzzed with messages from family members. Apologies, explanations, attempts to rewrite history. I ignored them all. The next morning, I sat at the head of the boardroom table in Summit's headquarters, watching as Olivia and Mr. Townsend filed in with the other executives. Gone was my sister's smug superiority, replaced by something that looked remarkably like respect. Before we begin, I announced, I want to talk about company culture, about how we treat people regardless of their title or apparent status, because success isn't just about profits, it's about character. Olivia wouldn't meet my eyes, but I saw her taking notes for the first time in her career. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about showing people that their judgment of you never mattered in the first place. While they were busy looking down on me, I was building an empire. And as for next Christmas, I think I'll host it at my place, all 15,000 square feet of it. Let them sleep in the garage. The cashmere scarf slips through my fingers, its softness a cruel contrast to the icy words still echoing through my phone. Maybe it's better if you sit this one out, Trevor says, his voice carrying that casual lilt that always precedes bad news. Marissa's new. I don't want her to feel uncomfortable. My gaze drifts to the perfectly wrapped Christmas presents, stacked beside my suitcase, gifts I spent 3 extra hospital shifts to afford. The bread pudding's cinnamon aroma turns from comforting to cloying in an instant. I've been uninvited from my own family Christmas. I'm Nicole, a geriatric physician at Boulder Memorial Hospital. For 8 years, I've been the family fixer, paying my parents' mortgage, funding my brother's art studio, covering mom's knee surgery, all while being told I'm too serious or too intense, not fun enough for family gatherings. My hands move with surgical precision as I end the call. The kitchen counter welcomes my hospital ID badge with a soft click. Christmas lights twinkle on my modest tree, casting shadows across presents that now have no destination. The snow whirling outside my window blurs as I open my banking app. $1,200 monthly mortgage support for my parents. Canceled. $6,000 art studio loan to Harrison. Terminated. $2,500 for mom's knee surgery rehabilitation. Stopped. No announcement. No explanation, just the quiet click of buttons that feels more decisive than any raised voice could be. My phone lights up again, mom's name flashing on the screen. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but habit wins. Hi, Mom. Honey! Her voice drips sweetness, the kind that coats bitter pills. Harrison told me you're upset. Did he tell you why? We just think. She pauses, and I hear the shift in her tone, the one she uses when talking about Marissa, bright with admiration I've never heard directed at me. It might cause tension if you come. We may not even answer the door. My fingers trace the edge of the wrapped cashmere scarf meant for her. You're actually doing this. Don't be dramatic, dear. There's always next year. Maybe if you tried harder to be more festive. The words settle like lead in my stomach. 20 years of too serious, too quiet, not fun enough crash over me. I think of my elderly patients, how their eyes light up when I sit with them, how they thank me for listening, for caring, for seeing them as people instead of problems. I don't argue, don't plead. My banking app is still open from moments before. One by one, I cancel the financial support that's flowed from me to them for years. The support they've taken while pushing me further from their table. Steam rises from my chamomile tea as I sit surrounded by Christmas preparations that suddenly feel hollow. I should cry, should rage, should feel something beyond this strange, floating sensation. A text lights up my phone. Merry Christmas early, honey. We'll figure this out next year. I set the phone face down and watch Snow Blanket Boulder in silence. For the first time in years, I feel lighter. Empty, yes, but lighter. The presents can go to my elderly patients. The bread pudding will make the nurse's break room smell like home tomorrow. Christmas morning dawns bright and cold. The scrubs rustle against my skin as I gather the presents I'd wrapped for family. Now headed to the geriatric ward instead. The soft wool of the cashmere scarf brushes against my hand as I close the closet door. Dr. Hartman. Agnes Miller catches my wrist as I adjust her pillow at the hospital. Her paper-thin skin feels cool against my hand. You're the only family some of us have today. I squeeze her fingers gently. Then I'm exactly where I need to be. The day passes in a blur of small moments, straightening blankets, listening to stories of Christmas mornings from 50 years ago, holding trembling hands through blood draws. The staff brings me coffee, dark and strong, leaving it outside patient rooms where they know I'll find it. You didn't have to work today, Lisa, the charge nurse, says. Thompson volunteered to cover. This is better than sitting home alone. Her eyes soften with understanding. She's seen enough family dynamics in this ward to read between the lines. Olive Wilson sits propped against pillows in room 412, silver hair neatly braided, a small Christmas cactus blooming on her windowsill. She pats the chair beside her bed. You look like someone carrying a heavy weight today. My professional mask slips for just a moment. Olive catches it. She never misses much. Family isn't always blood, Doctor. Hartman. She adjusts her oxygen tube. My son hasn't spoken to me in 30 years because I wouldn't give him money for another failed business venture. The hardest lesson is learning that blood doesn't always mean love. Across town, I imagine the scene at my parents' house. The dishes will be done by now. Harrison always times the cleanup to finish before the evening movie marathon. He'll be showing Marissa the photo wall, pointing out vacation snapshots and graduation portraits. That's when it happens. That's Dr. Nicole Hartman. Marissa's voice rises in recognition as she stops at my medical school graduation photo. The room goes quiet. She saved my grandmother's life. The silence stretches as she continues, wine glass forgotten in her hand. My grandmother said she was the first doctor who made her feel like a person, not just a patient. Harrison shifts his weight, that nervous tell I've known since childhood. Hey, who wants to watch White Christmas? But Marissa's gaze lingers on the photo, on the sister who should be there. The questions form in her eyes as she looks around the room, noticing the empty chair, the careful way everyone avoids mentioning my name. Later, she'll corner Harrison in the kitchen. Where is your sister? Why isn't she here? He'll fumble through explanations about my intensity and Marissa's sensitivity. Each word will plant seeds of doubt, of realization. The family's facade will crack just a little more. Days later, Marissa's social media post appears. To Dr. Nicole Hartman, who saved my grandmother with exceptional care and compassion. Thank you for your sacrifice working this Christmas while others celebrate. You represent the best of healthcare. The post spreads through Boulder's tight-knit community. Art gallery patrons recognize Harrison's last name. Mom's bridge club whispers over their cards. Dad's golf buddies ask pointed questions about his doctor daughter. The family's carefully constructed image begins to crumble, one shared post at a time. Back in the geriatric ward, I hold Olive's hand as she drifts to sleep. The Christmas cactus drops a coral bloom onto her blanket. Outside her window, the sun sets behind the flatirons, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of rose and gold. My phone stays silent in my pocket. No more family photos, no more forced holiday cheer. Just the quiet certainty that I'm exactly where I belong, with people who see me, value me, appreciate the gift of presence over presence. 2 weeks later, snow blankets Boulder in bitter white as my phone lights up for the 20th time. Harrison's name flashes on the screen, accompanied by a bank notification. Payment failed. Art studio loan. The automated payment notifications from the bank must have alerted him immediately when I canceled the transfers. I delete his message without reading it, just like the others. Can you reach out to Marissa? Clear things up. Harrison's losing gallery connections. Your father's golf buddies are asking questions. A formal letter arrives from my father, the heavyweight paper carrying his law firm's letterhead. The words swim before my eyes. Concerns about your increased working hours and signs of professional burnout. At work, Susan from HR catches me between patient rounds. Dr. Hartman, your father called about arranging a mental health leave. She studies my face with careful concern. I told him all leave requests need to come from the physician directly. In my office, I open the bottom drawer and add his letter to a growing file labeled Documentation. 8 years of canceled checks, loan agreements, and payment records nestle beneath it. Friday afternoon brings an unexpected visitor. Marissa stands in the hospital corridor clutching a bouquet of winter whites. Her designer boots click against the linoleum as she shifts her weight. She must have found me through the hospital directory after her grandmother mentioned I worked in geriatrics at Boulder Memorial. I didn't know you weren't invited to Christmas. Her voice carries none of Harrison's practiced charm. They talk about you like you're some distant relative, but my grandmother can't stop praising the doctor who finally listened to her. Harrison told me he supports your career. Marissa's mouth twists. He made it sound like he was the responsible older brother looking out for his kid's sister. I paid for his art studio. The words fall like snow, soft but cold. And their mortgage, and Mom's knee surgery. Marissa's fingers tighten on the bouquet stems. He never said. All those dinners at expensive restaurants, the gallery openings. Her voice trails off as understanding dawns. They used your money to exclude you. Before I can respond, my pager buzzes. Mrs. Wilson in 302 needs attention. Excuse me, I murmur, already moving toward my patient. Some responsibilities matter more than others. Sunday afternoon brings heavy clouds and heavier footsteps outside my apartment. The knock echoes like a gavel strike. Through the peephole, I see them clustered in the hallway. Mom in her good wool coat, Dad gripping his leather portfolio, Harrison with a stack of papers I recognize as overdue notices. They must have gotten my address from the emergency contact information I provided for their medical procedures years ago. Nicole, honey? Mom's voice drips sweetness. We just want to talk. I open the door exactly 3 inches, the security chain drawn tight. The familiar scent of Mom's perfume tries to pull me back to childhood holidays, when I still believed trying harder would make them see me. No. The word comes out calm, like delivering a diagnosis. I start to close the door. Wait! Harrison thrusts the overdue notices toward the gap. You can't just... The door clicks shut with quiet finality. I've been paying your bills for 8 years. My voice carries through the solid wood, clear and measured. Years of calming, anxious patience has taught me the power of a steady tone. You've been taking my money while treating me like an obligation. Mom's intake of breath sounds sharp. That's not fair, honey. We've always... I won't fund my own exclusion anymore. Silence stretches between us like a flat line on a heart monitor. Dad clears his throat. This isn't like you, Nicole. A laugh bubbles up, surprising in its lightness. Through the door, I say what decades of silence have buried. You never knew who I was. Their footsteps retreat down the hallway, leaving only the whisper of papers sliding under my door. Payment demands, guilt wrapped in legalese. The price they assumed I'd keep paying to belong. I gather the papers without reading them, add them to my documentation file, and return to reviewing patient charts. Outside my window, the snow has stopped falling. The late afternoon sun breaks through, setting the white landscape ablaze with unexpected light. A year later, on Christmas Eve, snow drifts past my window, each flake catching the glow of white Christmas lights. The scent of apple cinnamon bread pudding wafts through my apartment, rich and sweet, mingling with fresh pine from the Douglas fir in the corner. Light reflects off vintage glass ornaments, casting warm shadows across framed photographs, moments captured with patients, colleagues, friends who became more. Marissa's letter sits on my mantel, framed in simple silver. Her words about her grandmother's care face outward, a daily reminder that sometimes strangers see us more clearly than family ever could. The gentle tap of knuckles against my front door breaks the quiet. Come in, I call, sliding another bread pudding into the oven. The door opens to familiar faces. Sarah from pediatrics, John from radiology, Elena from physical therapy. Their arms overflow with dishes and small gifts. Something smells amazing in here, doctor. H, Sarah says, setting down a crystal bowl of cranberry sauce. Her holiday sweater sparkles with tiny lights, a holdover from the children's ward Christmas party. More colleagues filter in, filling my once quiet space with gentle chatter and laughter. A timer chimes and I pull out the bread pudding, golden brown and perfect. The ritual soothes me. This time, I'm cooking for people who choose to be here. Nicole? A soft voice cuts through the noise. Olive Wilson stands in my doorway, leaning on her walker but stronger than last Christmas. Her silver hair catches the light, expertly styled for the occasion. You made it. I cross the room, taking her coat. The walker clicks against hardwood as she settles into the armchair I've saved specially for her. Wouldn't miss it. Olive pats my hand. To think, a year ago I was stuck in that hospital bed, certain it would be my last Christmas. And now look at you. She grins, adjusting the red shawl around her shoulders. All thanks to the doctor who saw me as a person, not just another chart. A knock at the door interrupts our gathering. Olive's eyes sparkle with something knowing as I rise to answer it. Her granddaughter stands on my welcome mat, cheeks pink from cold. I'd given Olive my address weeks ago when planning this gathering, knowing she might need to share it with her family to arrange transportation. I brought someone who wanted to meet you. She steps aside to reveal Marissa, holding a small gift wrapped in silver paper. I hope it's okay, Marissa says. I've been wanting to thank you properly for everything with grandmother. The silence stretches between us, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then I step back, opening the door wider. There's plenty of bread pudding. When she mentions her recent separation from Harrison, no one offers empty platitudes. These people understand that sometimes walking away is an act of self-respect. Your grandmother asks about you. She tells me later, as others chat over coffee and dessert. She says you saved more than her life that day in the hospital. You showed her what strength really looks like. I think of the brother who couldn't make room for me at his table, the parents who took my support while withholding their acceptance. A text lights up my phone. Merry Christmas. We miss you. From Mom. No manipulation this time, no veiled requests for money or reconciliation. I set the phone aside without responding, turning back to the warm circle of my chosen family. Olive launches into another story about her nursing days, her hands painting pictures in the air. Sarah adds her own hospital tales, while John groans at the medical humor. These people see me, the quiet strength, the dedication, the heart beneath the professional exterior. They don't need me to be louder or lighter or different. They pull up chairs to my table and bring dishes to share and understand that family means making room for who someone truly is. I used to think love meant being the one who stayed late, who fixed everything, who never needed thanks. But real love doesn't make you beg for a place at the table, and a family that only values you for what you give was never family to begin with. The snow continues to fall outside my window, each flake finding its own path to the ground. Inside, laughter rings against my walls, and the scent of cinnamon and apples wraps around us like a promise. I found my way home at last. The sound of my father's coffee mug slamming against the kitchen counter made me flinch, but it was his words that cut through me like ice water. You think you're some kind of saint? You're just a leech with a martyr complex. His face contorted with rage as he jabbed a finger toward me. You live under this roof for free, and now you're lecturing us like we owe you something. My throat constricted as I stood paralyzed. The refrigerator door still open behind me, cold air spilling out against my back. The grocery receipt in my hand, $278.43, paid from my nearly empty checking account, suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I looked to my mother sitting at the table, then to my sister, then my brother, 3 pairs of eyes that refused to meet mine. No one spoke. No one moved. After 7 years of paying their mortgage, utilities, groceries, and emergencies, I had finally asked for help with the burden. Their response wasn't just silence, it was contempt. My name is Rachel. I'm 30 and a graphic designer. This is the story of how I reclaimed my worth after my family tried to erase me. For 7 years, I had been the silent backbone of our family. When my dad lost his job after his company shut down, I stepped in without hesitation. At 23, I was juggling retail work during the day and freelance design projects at night, just to keep our house from collapsing into financial ruin. My brother Oliver was in college, my sister Veronica still in high school, Mom emotionally overwhelmed, and Dad. He never once said thank you. I paid for everything. Rent, electricity, medical emergencies, groceries, birthday dinners. If it came with a bill, I handled it. I never complained, not even when my savings dwindled to double digits, or when I skipped dinner to eat cheap noodles in my room so they wouldn't notice. I kept hoping that one day they'd see me as more than their personal ATM, as a daughter, a sister, a human being who also needed care and recognition. That Sunday morning, I had just paid off the last of Dad's credit card debt from an old hospital bill. I thought maybe, just maybe, this time he'd acknowledge what I'd done. Instead, when I gently suggested we start budgeting differently because I couldn't keep covering everything alone, he erupted. After his outburst, I stood frozen, heart hammering against my ribs. The kitchen suddenly felt both too small and impossibly vast. I waited, 1 second, 2, 3, for someone, anyone, to defend me. To say, period. Wait, she's the reason we still have a home. But my mother stared at her hands. My sister glanced up from her phone, then back down. My brother simply shrugged and returned to his cereal. I was invisible. 7 years of sacrifice, and I was invisible. That night, I packed a single suitcase. I didn't announce my departure or cause a scene. I simply left, driving across town to my friend Kristen's apartment, where she had offered me her tiny guest room. I hadn't told anyone where I was going. Then I did something I'd never done before. I cut the financial cord. The auto pay on the mortgage, canceled. The utilities, discontinued. The grocery delivery app I'd subscribed to on their behalf, deleted. For the first time in 7 years, they would have to figure things out without me. 2 weeks later, my phone exploded with missed calls and messages. At first, guilt clawed at my insides every time I silenced another call from Mom or ignored a text from Oliver asking, "Why are the lights off?" Years of conditioning had taught me that my pain came last, that no matter how much I was hurting, their comfort took priority. But something had cracked inside me that Sunday. This time, I let my silence speak for me. I watched from a distance as the consequences of my absence unfolded. The fridge stayed empty. The water got cut off. The car payments defaulted. Mom posted vague Facebook statuses asking for prayers during this difficult time. But no one mentioned my name. I had been erased from their story the moment I stopped serving a purpose. 3 weeks after I left, an unknown number flashed on my phone. I answered out of instinct. "You're being dramatic," Veronica hissed without preamble. "Mom and Dad are struggling and you're out there pretending to be some victim." I took a deep breath, my knuckles white around the phone. "You mean the victim who's been paying for your Wi-Fi, your lunch orders, and your online clothes for the last 4 years?" The silence that followed was deafening. "You knew," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "You all knew what I was doing. You just didn't care." She hung up. That night, I broke down, not from regret, but from grief. Grief over a family that had never truly seen me as more than a bank account with a heartbeat. I wrote a letter I never intended to send. "You called me a leech, Dad, but I was the one keeping your roof over your head. You called me selfish, but when was the last time anyone asked if I was okay? When I stopped paying, you didn't just lose money. You lost the one person who actually cared enough to hold everything together while you all treated me like I didn't matter." 2 months passed. I moved out of Kristen's guest room and into a tiny studio apartment downtown that I could finally afford with my new job. I secured a better remote position with a design agency and finally started spending on myself. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. I bought real food. I went to therapy. I slept without waking up to financial anxiety. Then came the email from my father. Subject line, "Urgent, please read." It was a wall of desperate text explaining they were being evicted, blindsided by the bills I used to cover, and if I could just help out this once, it would be enough to keep them afloat. There was no apology, just desperation. I didn't respond. A few days later, a letter arrived at my workplace, an address I had never given my family. Somehow, they had tracked it down through a mutual friend who worked at the same company. Inside was something that made my heart stop. A copy of my father's retirement insurance policy. My name had been intentionally removed 2 years ago. The reason listed, not reliable. Not reliable. After 7 years of being their financial life support, I was not reliable. My hands trembled as I stared at the document. They hadn't just taken me for granted. They had actively erased me behind my back while still accepting my money. Something inside me shifted. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to reclaim my narrative. Fate handed me the opportunity in the most unexpected way. Taylor, a college friend I hadn't spoken to in years, texted me. "Hey, you know that duplex your parents live in? My uncle's firm just bought the building. They're planning to renovate and flip it unless you're interested in taking over the lease. Want me to put you in touch?" I stared at the message, hardly believing what I was reading. Taylor knew about my family situation because we'd stayed connected on social media, where I occasionally vented about them. The very roof I had kept over their heads was now on the market, and I had the chance to be the one holding the keys. I smiled, not out of spite, but because karma had finally knocked, and this time, I answered. I took the meeting. The building was in rough shape. My family had neglected the basics just as they had neglected me. But I saw potential. With my saved money from the past few months of my better-paying job, good credit, and a small business loan I qualified for, I bought the building under an LLC, no traceable name, no link to my personal identity. The process took about 3 weeks to complete. To them, I was gone. But I wasn't gone. I was watching. The day the ownership legally changed hands, I received a voicemail from Mom. She was crying. "We got a notice," she whimpered. "They're selling the building. We're going to lose the house. I don't know what to do." That was the house I had paid rent for when no one else could. The house I kept from foreclosure with my 2 AM design jobs, overdraft charges, and skipped meals. And now she was crying about losing it. It didn't break me. It calmed me. I sent a formal notice from the LLC, giving them 60 days to vacate. 3 days later, they showed up outside my new place. Not my old apartment, not Kristen's guest room, my studio condo, which they had tracked down through my cousin Emma, who I'd told about my new address. She later apologized for revealing my location when they claimed it was an emergency. My father stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, as if nothing had ever happened. My mother looked worn and confused. Oliver, who hadn't spoken to me in months, held a grocery bag as if it were some kind of peace offering. "Can we come in?" Dad asked flatly. "No," I said, standing in my doorway. "Look," he started, his tone somewhere between annoyed and desperate. "We're going through a lot. You've made your point, but family helps each other. You owe us that much." I laughed quietly, but not kindly. "I owe you? I gave you everything for 7 years. You threw me out and called me a leech." Mom reached out, eyes brimming. "We were stressed. We didn't mean it." "Did you mean taking my name off the retirement policy?" I asked, my voice steady. "Was that also just stress?" Their faces dropped. They hadn't expected me to know about that. "I know everything," I continued, looking each of them in the eye. "You made me the backup plan, the silent mule, and when I got tired, you tried to erase me. Well, now I've erased you from my accounts, my payments, and my future." They stood in stunned silence. "But I'll do one better," I added. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm offering you a choice." Dad's brow furrowed as I continued. "You can stay in the house under one condition. You'll pay full market rent, on time, with no special treatment, the same deal I'd give a stranger. Or you can leave." It was quiet for a beat too long. "You're bluffing," Oliver said, his voice lacking conviction. I stepped back into the doorway and held up the new keys. "These say otherwise." Eventually, they left. No shouting, no begging, just stunned silence. I had taken back everything on my own terms. Weeks passed. They didn't choose to stay. They moved in with my Aunt Julia, who had always looked down on me for never settling down. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they weren't happy there, but they never reached out again. 6 months later, they moved to another state entirely, and we haven't spoken since. Our relationship was permanently severed that day on my doorstep. I kept the duplex, renovated it, and turned the second unit into a quiet, creative retreat where I painted, read, and finally breathed without tension, pressing on my chest. The rent from the tenants paid for my peace. The silence paid for my healing. One day, I framed that voicemail Mom left me, not to gloat, but as a reminder. I am not a leech. I am not disposable. I am not a backup plan. I am the foundation they stood on, and now I'm the one standing tall. And when people ask me if I ever miss my family, I smile and say, number. I finally built one with boundaries, grace, and my name on the deed. Full circle. All mine. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.